Luke sat quietly on his bed as Nurse Geoff finished adjusting the straps on his chair. The group home still felt strange, different voices in the hallway, different smells at dinner, different routines. Nothing like the chaos he grew up in, but also nothing like Ben's place either. "Josh should be here soon," Geoff said gently. "Let's get you cleaned up and comfortable." Luke gave a small shrug. "I guess I can fake being happy for a little bit." Geoff paused, looking at him carefully. "You don't always have to fake it here." Luke looked down at his hands. "You say that, but everyone expects me to be grateful, independent, strong," he swallowed. "My former friend Vin betrayed me, and Ben, everything just blew up." Geoff knelt slightly so they were eye to eye. "Vin was hurt too. Hurt people make messy choices." "I know," Luke said softly, "but I still miss Ben." There was a long pause. "It sounds like you loved Ben," Geoff said carefully, "not necessarily romantically, but deeply." Luke's jaw tightened. I didn't." "I didn't mean labels," Geoff said calmly. "You were controlled your whole life, your parents made every decision, then Ben came along and let you choose things, even little things, what to wear, when to sleep, what to eat. That kind of freedom can feel powerful, new, it can get tangled up with attachment." Luke stared ahead. He remembered the first time Ben let him pick his own pajamas instead of having them chosen for him. The first time Ben asked, "What do you want?" instead of telling him what was happening next. "I never got to be my own person," Luke whispered. "With Ben I did." Geoff nodded. "That doesn't mean you can't have that again, it just means you're learning what healthy care looks like." Luke shifted in his seat, embarrassed. "He used to help me with everything, baths, diapers, bedtime. I didn't feel ashamed, I felt safe." "And safety is powerful," Geoff replied. "But safety doesn't belong to just one person. You can build that here too, it just takes time." A knock came at the door. "Hey, little brother," Josh's voice called from the hallway. Luke inhaled slowly. "Okay," he murmured, "I'll try not to fake it." Geoff smiled. "That's independence, not pretending, just showing up as you are." Josh walked in with a warm grin and a small bag of Luke's favorite snacks. Luke's chest tightened, not with panic this time, but with something softer. Maybe he wasn't as alone as he thought. And maybe the group home wasn't a prison. Maybe it was the first place he'd learn how to be cared for, without losing himself. Josh stepped further into the room, smiling the way he always did when he was trying to keep things light. "So Luke," he asked gently, "how are you doing today?" Luke adjusted his hands in his lap. "I'm still kind of annoyed with Vin." Josh nodded. "Yeah, I figured that might still sting, other than that." Luke hesitated. He didn't want to admit that mornings were still hard, that waking up without Ben there to guide the routine felt strange, that depending on new staff made him feel small all over again. "Other than that, I'm okay," he said finally. Josh smiled. "Okay is good, okay is progress." Luke rolled his eyes slightly but couldn't hide a tiny smirk. "Well," Josh continued, "we're going to meet Linda and Pete at the bagel shop you like. Thought we could all hang out for a bit." Luke blinked. "The one with the cinnamon raisin bagels?" "Yep, and the big booth in the corner." Luke looked toward Geoff for a second, then back at Josh. "Okay." Geoff finished locking the chair brakes before unlocking them again to guide him toward the door. "Field trip," he said lightly. Luke took a slow breath as they headed down the hallway. The group home still felt unfamiliar, but leaving it, even just for a bagel, made him feel a little more normal. Outside, the air was cool. Josh walked beside him instead of behind him, matching his pace. "You don't have to talk about Vin today," Josh said quietly. "Or Ben, we can just eat bagels and argue about who gets the last chocolate chip one." Luke gave a small laugh. "Pete always cheats." "Exactly," Josh grinned. "Some things never change." As they got closer to the shop, Luke felt something he hadn't felt in a while. Not fake happiness. Not forced independence. Just a small, steady piece of normal. Pete slid into the booth across from Luke, keeping his tone casual but his eyes careful. "Luke, how's your ED coming along?" The question wasn't judgmental, just honest. Luke stared at the table for a second before answering. "It's still there," he admitted. "In the back of my head, it probably always will be." Linda reached over and gently squeezed his hand. "But," Luke continued, "I don't need my feeding tube as often anymore. It's more of a backup now, not because of my ED but because of my SMA stuff. Sometimes I just physically can't eat enough or I get too tired. Josh nodded, that makes sense. Pete leaned forward slightly, so it's there for support, not control. Luke gave a small nod. Yeah, before it felt like proof I failed, now it's more like insurance. If I have a bad day physically, I don't spiral mentally. Linda smiled softly, that's growth, Luke. Luke shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. I still hear the thoughts sometimes, counting, overthinking, wondering if I'm too much. Josh shook his head gently, you're not too much, you're learning. Pete added, and having a tube for medical support because of SMA isn't weakness, it's using what you need. Luke looked at the bagel in front of him. For a moment the old voice flickered, calculating, doubting. Then he looked back up. I'm trying to separate the two, he said, my body needing help and my brain trying to control things, they're not the same. Josh smiled proudly, that's huge. Luke took a small bite of his bagel, not to prove anything, not to impress anyone. Just because he wanted to. And for the first time in a while, the voice in the back of his head was quieter than the conversation at the table. The bell over the bagel shop door jingled as someone walked in, but no one at the table noticed. The TV mounted in the corner shifted from weather to breaking news. Luke's eyes lifted first. Benjamin Trucker Smith has been killed in jail. Luke froze. Mister, can you please turn it up? He called to the employee behind the counter. The volume rose. The reporter continued, authorities confirm that Benjamin Trucker Smith was found unresponsive early this morning. Foul play is suspected. The shop went quiet around them. Luke's hands tightened against the armrests of his chair. The screen shifted. In related developments, Vin Smith is now being investigated for allegedly hearing a hitman. Linda gasped softly. Josh whispered, oh my gosh. The journalist on screen continued, sources say Vin claimed Benjamin had hurt him in the past. After Benjamin's release, he reportedly began working as a caregiver for another disabled individual. Vin allegedly told investigators, I'm okay if I get life in jail because Benjamin won't hurt anyone else like he did to me. The words hung heavy in the air. Josh looked at Luke immediately. Luke's face had gone pale, not dramatic, not loud, just drained. Linda leaned closer. Luke, how do you feel? Luke kept staring at the screen for a few seconds after it switched back to the anchor desk. Then he swallowed. He needs help. Josh blinked. Luke. I just told you, Luke said quietly, finally looking at them. Vin needs help. Linda studied his face, and Benjamin. Luke's jaw trembled slightly. Benjamin made mistakes, he hurt people, he hurt Vin, he hurt me in some ways too, his voice softened. But dying like that, that's not healing, that's just more damage. Josh reached across the table, placing his hand over Luke's. You're not angry. Luke shook his head slowly. I'm sad for everyone. His breathing grew heavier for a second, but he steadied himself. Vin thought this would fix something inside him, it won't. Linda squeezed his shoulder gently. You're allowed to feel more than one thing. Luke nodded faintly. I don't feel relieved, I don't feel justice, I just feel tired. The bagel in front of him sat untouched now. Josh glanced at the TV, then back at his brother. We can leave. Luke shook his head. No, I don't want to run from it. He looked down at his hands. Ben gave me freedom, but he also had parts of him that were broken. Vin was broken too, and now it's just permanent. The weight of it settled over the table. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just heavy. Luke inhaled slowly. Violence doesn't undo hurt, he said quietly, it just spreads it. And for the first time since the news started playing, the room felt still again. Not because the pain was gone, but because Luke had faced it without collapsing. The volume on the TV stayed up. No one at the table was eating anymore. The reporter's voice came back, steadier this time. In further developments in the Benjamin case, authorities confirmed that 2 additional individuals, Pat Green and Aaron Green, were killed in a similar manner. Investigators say suspect Vin Smith allegedly targeted them for their role in hiding their disabled son, Luke Green, and hearing Benjamin. The bagel shop felt like it had no air. The reporter continued, reading from a statement. According to Vin, he said, Luke and his brother and his sister are free, and so am I. Luke didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just stared at the screen. Then quietly, he killed our parents too. Linda's hand flew to her mouth. Fuck. Josh's voice cracked. Oh my god. The sounds of dishes clinking behind the counter felt distant, unreal. Josh looked at Luke, searching for something: tears, anger, relief. Anything. You were right, Josh said softly, he needs help. Luke's breathing slowed instead of sped up. He thought he was saving us, Luke said quietly. He thought he was ending something. Linda leaned closer. How do you feel? Luke swallowed. It took a moment. They controlled us, he said. They hid me, they made me small, they hired someone who complicated everything. His hands trembled slightly now, but they were still our parents. Josh nodded, eyes wet. Luke's voice lowered. No one asked me if I wanted them dead. Silence wrapped around the booth. I wanted distance, Luke continued. Boundaries, truth, therapy, accountability. His jaw tightened, not graves. Linda reached over and gently rested her forehead against his for a second. You're allowed to grieve something complicated. Josh wiped his face. This isn't freedom, this is trauma stacked on trauma. Luke finally looked away from the screen. Vin thought he was freeing us, he whispered, but freedom doesn't come from someone else deciding who lives or dies. He closed his eyes briefly. I needed help from my parents, I needed protection, I needed honesty, but I didn't need revenge. Josh squeezed his shoulder. We're still here. Luke nodded faintly. Yeah, he said, and now we have to live with what he did in our name. The TV kept talking. But at the table the story had shifted. It wasn't about criminals or headlines anymore. It was about three siblings sitting in a booth, realizing that even when control is gone, the grief still stays. And healing, real healing, would have to be chosen, not forced. Luke's hands were shaking now. Pass me your phone, he said. Josh didn't argue. Here. Luke hit Sam's number and put it on speaker. The phone rang twice. Hello, Sam answered. Luke didn't ease into it. What the fuck is wrong with your son? Across the table, a few customers turned their heads. Sam sounded stunned. Luke, I just heard Vin said your parents needed to go because they got Ben out. They were locked up, Luke shouted. They were already being handled by the system. Luke, Linda whispered urgently, calm down, you're making a scene. Luke's chest was heaving now, his voice cracked. Fuck you, fuck your family, and fuck Vin. There was silence on the other end, Sam starting to speak. But Luke hit end. The phone slipped from his hand. And then it all hit him at once. Not anger. Not yelling. Just collapse. He folded forward as much as he could in his chair, shoulders shaking, breath breaking apart into uneven sobs. Josh immediately moved beside him. Hey, I've got you. Linda slid in close on the other side, one hand on his back, steady and firm. Luke couldn't form words at first. Finally, through tears. They don't get to decide who lives, they don't get to decide that in my name. I know, Josh said quietly, I know. Luke's voice trembled. They were awful, but they were still my parents, and now I don't even get to figure it out, it's just over. Linda kept her tone low. You're grieving something complicated, that's not weakness. Luke shook his head. He thought he was freeing me, but now I feel trapped in it. Josh leaned close so only Luke could really hear. You didn't ask for this, none of this is yours to carry. Luke's sobs softened into shaky breathing. Around them the shop slowly returned to quiet murmurs. Josh gently wiped Luke's face with a napkin. We can leave or we can sit, your call. Luke swallowed hard. I just wanted answers, he whispered, not bodies. Josh nodded. And this time when Luke cried, he didn't try to hide it. He didn't fake strength. He didn't pretend independence. He just let his siblings hold him while the world outside kept spinning, loud, messy, and far too permanent. Luke wiped at his face roughly, trying to steady his breathing. I need to go, he said hoarsely. Can one of you guys drive my chair for me? Josh was already standing. I've got you. He gently took control of the chair handles, careful, steady, not rushing him, not treating him like he was fragile glass either. Pete exhaled hard. Guys, I know this is fucked up, I'm sorry, I don't even have words. Luke didn't answer, he just nodded faintly. Linda was already pulling out her phone. I'm calling Lina now. The phone rang once. Hey, what's up? Lina answered casually. Linda didn't soften it. Not good. We just found out Ben, Mom, and Dad died. Luke's former friend Vin had them killed. There was a long silence on the other end. What? Lena's voice dropped. Hitmen, Linda said quietly. The news confirmed it. Another pause. How is Luke? Lina asked immediately. Josh answered from beside him as they stepped outside into the cooler air. He's with us, he's shaken. Luke finally spoke, voice raw. He said he did it to free us. On the phone, Lina inhaled sharply. That's not freedom, that's trauma. Luke closed his eyes for a second as Josh guided his chair toward the car. I didn't want them dead, he said quietly. I wanted distance, I wanted therapy, I wanted space. I know, Lina said gently, and that matters. What he did isn't yours. Linda rubbed her forehead. We're heading back to the group home with Luke. I'm coming over, Lina said immediately. He shouldn't be alone tonight. Luke opened his eyes and looked up at Josh. I don't want to be alone, he admitted. Josh gave him a firm nod. You're not. The call ended. For a moment, the four of them just stood there in the parking lot, wind moving around them, traffic humming in the distance. Everything had changed. And yet they were still here. Josh squeezed Luke's shoulder gently before helping him into the van. Today isn't about being strong, Josh said quietly. It's about staying together. Luke leaned back exhausted. I just wanted answers, he whispered again. This time no one tried to fix it. They just stayed close. They were barely through the doors of the group home when Josh spotted Geoff near the front desk. Geoff, Josh said, voice steady but strained, take the rest of the day off. Geoff looked up immediately. Thanks, but may I ask why? Josh swallowed. Saying it out loud made it real again. We just found out our parents passed away. Geoff's expression shifted instantly, professional calm mixed with genuine concern. He glanced at Luke, taking in his red eyes and exhausted posture. Oh, Luke. Luke didn't look up. It's all over the news. Geoff stepped closer but kept his tone grounded. You don't have to explain anything right now. Josh rubbed the back of his neck. I figured we'd handle things as a family tonight. Geoff nodded slowly. No need to push me out. I can step back, give you space, but I'm still going to be in the building. Luke finally looked up at him. I don't want to be alone, Luke admitted quietly. You won't be, Geoff said gently. I'll stay nearby. If you need medical support or just a breather, I'm here, but I'll give you privacy. Josh gave a grateful nod. Thank you. Geoff crouched slightly so he was at Luke's eye level. Big losses can hit in waves, he said calmly. Shock first, then anger, then something else. There's no right order. Whatever shows up is allowed. Luke's jaw trembled again, but he held it together this time. I didn't want them dead, he whispered. I know, Geoff said softly. Wanting safety and wanting someone gone are two very different things. Linda and Pete stood nearby, quiet but present. Josh squeezed Luke's shoulder again. Let's get you upstairs. As they moved toward Luke's room, Geoff stayed by the desk, not leaving, not hovering. Just there. And for the first time since the news broke, Luke felt something small but steady beneath the grief. He wasn't being controlled. He wasn't being rescued. He wasn't being avenged. He was being supported. And that made all the difference. Lina stepped through the front doors a little out of breath, eyes scanning the lobby until she saw Geoff at the desk. Geoff, she said quickly but politely, Luke Green's room, please. Geoff gave a small nod, 3A. His tone softened, I'm sorry about your parents. Lina paused for half a second, the weight of it still felt unreal. Thank you, she said quietly. She headed down the hallway, her steps quick but controlled. The building felt too calm for what had just happened, too normal. When she reached 3A, she didn't knock right away. She steadied herself first. Then she tapped gently. Inside, Josh was sitting close to Luke's chair, Pete leaning against the wall. Linda stood near the window. Come in, Josh called softly. Lina opened the door and stepped inside. Luke looked up at her. The moment he saw her face, whatever thin layer of control he had rebuilt cracked again, not loud this time, just silent tears slipping down. Lina crossed the room without hesitation and knelt in front of him, wrapping her arms carefully around his shoulders. I'm here, she said firmly. You're not carrying this alone. Luke leaned into her as much as he could. I didn't want this, he whispered. I know, Lina said, none of us did. The room was quiet except for Luke's uneven breathing. Josh spoke gently, we'll figure out the legal stuff later, right now it's just us. Lina brushed a hand through Luke's hair, you don't have to be strong tonight. Luke closed his eyes. For the first time all day, he wasn't reacting to headlines or defending his feelings. He was just a brother in a room with his siblings. And even in the middle of loss, that mattered. The door to 3A was closed. And inside, all four of them finally broke. Not polite tears. Not quiet sniffling. Real shaking, ugly grief. Josh had his face in his hands. Linda's shoulders were trembling, Luke's breathing was uneven, chest tight. Lina was crying too, but there was anger in hers. Pete stood near the door, overwhelmed. I'll give you guys space, get some air, he said softly, slipping out. The silence he left behind didn't last long. Lina wiped her face hard. They were assholes to us. I was abused by them and had to help raise Luke because they made him more disabled than he was. They abandoned Josh because he didn't want to be a doctor, and Linda had to become a lawyer so mommy and daddy would approve. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. So why are we crying over assholes? Shut up, Linda snapped instantly. Lina, not right now, Josh said, voice strained. Luke's head was spinning, the words were too loud, too sharp. Josh, Luke whispered, I need a change. Josh understood immediately, not emotionally, physically. Luke needed to be adjusted, repositioned, grounded. Okay, Josh said gently, moving to help. But Lina wasn't done. You all need to stop pretending they were something they were bad people to us. The tension snapped. Linda stepped forward and slapped Lina across the face. The sound was sharp. Silence followed it. Lina froze, hands slowly rising to her cheek. Josh stood up immediately, Linda. Luke flinched in his chair, heart racing. Linda's eyes were blazing, not with hatred but with pain. You don't get to tell me how to grieve, she shouted. I know what they did, I lived it too. Lina's voice trembled now, anger collapsing into hurt. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one who remembers? I remember, Josh shouted back. I remember everything, but they were still our parents. Luke's breathing started to quicken. Guys, he whispered, please. Josh turned instantly back to him. Okay, focus on Luke. Linda stepped back, covering her mouth. Lina's eyes filled with fresh tears, not rage now, just shock. Josh knelt beside Luke. Look at me, slow breath. Luke's voice shook. I didn't want them dead, even if they hurt us, I didn't want this. Lina's anger drained completely. I know, she whispered. Linda wiped her face. We're not crying because they were good, she said, voice breaking. We're crying because it's final, because we never got the chance to confront them, to fix it, to hear them admit it. Josh nodded, grief isn't approval. Lina slowly lowered herself into a chair. I'm sorry, she said quietly, I'm just so angry. We all are, Josh replied. Luke looked between them. They were abusive, he said softly, and they were our parents, both can be true. No one argued with that. The room was still heavy. But the shouting stopped. Josh finished helping Luke adjust, steady and careful. Linda sat down, hands shaking. Lina stared at the floor, cheeks still red. Grief had cracked them open. But they were still in the same room. Still choosing to stay. The room felt like it was cracking under the weight of grief. All four of them, Luke, Josh, Linda and Lina, had finally broken. Tears, sobs, trembling hands and heavy breaths filled the small space. Pete, standing near the door, raised his hands. I'll give you guys space, get some air, he said quietly, stepping out. But inside the storm continued. Lina's voice was sharp, trembling with rage and pain. They were assholes to us, I was abused by them and had to help with Luke. Luke had to be more disabled than he was. They abandoned Josh and cut him off because he didn't want to be a doctor. And Linda had to get a job as a lawyer so mommy and daddy would approve. So why are we crying over assholes? Linda's voice shot back immediately, loud and cutting. Shut up. Lina, not right now, Josh added, trying to calm her. Luke's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. His voice was weak but urgent. Josh, I need a change. Josh moved immediately, adjusting Luke in his chair and steadying him. Lina's fury didn't soften. You all need to stop with this stuff, they were bad people to us. The tension snapped violently. Without thinking, Linda slapped Lina across the face. The sharp sound echoed in the room. Lina froze, hand rising to her cheek, eyes wide with shock and pain. Josh shouted "Linda" and lunged toward them, but Luke flinched in his chair, heart racing. Linda's eyes burned with anguish, not anger. "You don't get to tell me how to grieve, I lived it too." Lina's voice cracked, anger collapsing into hurt. "Then why does it feel like I'm the only one who remembers?" Josh turned instantly to Luke, kneeling beside him. "Okay, focus on Luke, breathe." Luke's voice trembled. "I didn't want them dead, even if they hurt us, I just didn't want this." The room finally slowed. Lina sank into a chair, cheeks red and tears streaming. "I'm sorry, I'm just so angry." Linda's voice softened but stayed broken. "We're not crying because they were good, we're crying because it's final, because we never got the chance to confront them, to fix it, to hear them admit it." Josh nodded. "Grief isn't approval." Luke looked between them. "They were abusive and they were our parents, both can be true." No one argued. The room was still heavy, but the shouting stopped. Josh finished helping Luke adjust in his chair, steady and careful. For the first time, they just sat together, broken, hurting, but not alone. Luke's voice was quiet but firm, carrying through the heavy air of the room. "Lina," he said, looking directly at her, "I feel how you feel, I really do, but I'm not yelling at people who dealt with the same abuse from the same abuser." Lina blinked, her anger softening just enough to hear him. Her hands trembled in her lap, still hot from the slap and the tears, but she didn't look away. I know you're hurting," Luke continued, "and it's okay to be angry, but yelling at us, it doesn't help. We all survived them, we all lived through it differently. That doesn't make anyone less hurt, and it doesn't make anyone wrong." Josh placed a steadying hand on Luke's shoulder. "He's right, Lina, we're all trying to process this, together, not against each other." Lina exhaled, shoving her hands into her hair. I feel like nobody sees it, that they get away with everything." Luke nodded slowly. "I see it, I feel it, but hurting each other now, that won't make them accountable, it just breaks us." A heavy silence settled in the room. Linda, still wiping her tears, looked at Luke with a small nod. Lina finally whispered, her voice barely audible, "Okay, I get it." Luke gave a faint, tired smile. "That's enough for now, we just stay together, that's what matters." Josh exhaled, relieved. "Yeah, together." For the first time since the storm broke, the siblings sat in quiet solidarity, grief still raw, but no longer tearing them apart. Josh knelt beside Luke, looking him in the eye with steady concern. "You want to go back in your chair?" he asked softly. Luke shook his head, taking a shaky breath. I can't right now. I need to breathe." Josh nodded slowly, understanding. "I can loosen the straps for you if that helps." Luke gave a small, weary shake of his head. "It's not physically," he said, his voice trembling. "It's mentally, I need a moment without feeling trapped, without thinking about everything that's happened." Josh reached out, resting a hand lightly on Luke's arm. "Okay, we'll take a minute, you don't have to go back in the chair until you're ready." Luke exhaled, letting the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. I need to breathe, just for a little while." Josh squeezed his shoulder gently. "You got it, no rush, no pressure, just breathe." For a long moment, Luke sat quietly, focusing on the air moving in and out, letting his mind settle even as the grief and chaos lingered around them. Linda and Lina gave him space, sitting nearby but silent, letting him have this small pocket of control, the first he'd had all day. Linda leaned forward, her voice soft but firm, looking directly at Luke. "They used your disability as a weapon against you, Luke. They tried to control you, keep you small, make you feel powerless." Luke shook his head slightly, eyes downcast. "You guys will never believe it, but have you ever wondered why, whenever I am able to get out of my chair, I do?" Josh frowned, leaning in. "Yes, but why?" Luke's hands tightened in his lap. "You guys had your trauma in the past. Mine is twofold, but I need a wheelchair or a power chair for the rest of my life. That's not something I can outgrow, that's not temporary." Josh's voice softened, a quiet acknowledgement. "Your trauma is there every day, even if it's new for them." Luke blinked slowly, taking that in. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been carrying more than just what they did to me. I've been carrying the weight of needing this chair, needing help, needing freedom within limits, and they tried to twist all of it against me." Linda reached out, resting a hand over his. You survived it all, Luke, and you're still here, still speaking your truth. Luke exhaled, a little of the tension leaving him. Yeah, still here. Josh gave him a small, reassuring nod. Still here, and now we're with you every step of the way. For the first time that day, Luke allowed himself a brief, fragile calm, knowing his siblings understood even just a little the weight he carried. Josh leaned closer, curiosity and concern in his eyes. I want to know because you can tilt and recline in the chair. Does that help at all? Luke hesitated, swallowing hard. That might sound weird. Josh shook his head gently. No, we just didn't know, that's all. Luke looked down at his hands. It helps my body, my muscles, my joints, my pain. Tilting back, reclining, it eases the strain. He took a breath. But it doesn't help my trauma. Josh nodded slowly, taking in the weight of that. Right, because trauma isn't physical, it's inside, it sticks around no matter what your body can do. Luke's voice was soft, almost a whisper. Yeah, tilting and reclining doesn't fix what they did, doesn't fix the fear, the control, the things I can't forget. Linda reached over and gently touched his arm. We get it, Luke, we see it, and we'll keep seeing it. Luke exhaled slowly. Thanks, just knowing you're here, that helps a little. Josh gave him a small smile. We're here always. For Luke, it wasn't a cure, but it was a start, a tiny piece of support in a world that had so often felt against him. Luke's voice was raw, a mix of relief, anger, and grief. He looked at his siblings, eyes wet but steady. Thank you guys for everything, he said quietly but with weight behind each word. And thank you, Ben, for helping me get out of Mom and Dad's control. Rest in peace. He paused, taking a slow, shuddering breath. Mom and Dad, I'm free now, and I hope you're burning in hell right now. The words hung in the air, fierce and unfiltered. Linda, Josh, and Lina exchanged glances, a mix of understanding, sorrow, and shared anger. Josh reached over, giving Luke's shoulder a firm squeeze. You're free now, Luke, that's what matters. Lina wiped her tears, her voice trembling but resolute. Yeah, you don't have to carry them anymore, not their control, not their lies. Linda exhaled slowly, still quiet. You survived them, and now you can start living for yourself. Luke let out a shaky laugh, bitter but honest. Yeah, living for me finally. For the first time in a long while, the siblings sat together without shouting, without fear, each of them letting the anger, the grief, and the relief settle in together. Pete stepped back into the room, trying to bring a small sense of normalcy. Hey, you guys want to go out and have dinner? Luke looked at him, a faint smile breaking through his exhaustion. We are free now. Pete blinked, confused. Free. The three siblings exchanged a quiet glance, a small shared understanding passing between them without a word. Linda shrugged lightly, smirking through her tears. It's a green siblings thing, you wouldn't get it. Luke let out a small, tired laugh. Exactly. Josh leaned back, letting the weight of the day settle, still holding Luke's hand. Lina rested her head lightly on Luke's shoulder and Linda gave a soft nod, the four of them finally feeling a small spark of togetherness. Pete smiled awkwardly but warmly. All right, then dinner it is. And for the first time in a long, long while, the Greens were just free. After that stormy, painful day, life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm for the Greens, messy, but theirs. Luke no longer struggled with his ED. The years of fear, control, and constant mental strain began to fade, replaced by stability and care. Meals were easier. Therapy sessions helped him process his trauma. And while the shadows of his past never fully disappeared, they no longer dictated every moment of his life. Josh made the decision quietly but firmly. He brought Luke to live with him, giving him a home where independence and care could coexist. Geoff, hired by Josh, became more than just a nurse. He became a steady presence, supporting Luke physically and emotionally, always attentive but never overbearing. For Luke, it was the first time he truly felt safe in his own body. Meanwhile, life moved forward for the rest of the siblings. Linda and Pete finally welcomed a baby into their lives, a tangible new beginning, one filled with laughter and love. The tiny cries and the warmth of parenthood brought them joy they never thought possible after everything they'd endured. Lina, too, found a piece of herself she'd long kept hidden. She began embracing her identity as a bisexual woman, exploring her feelings and relationships with honesty and pride. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of judgment from family or society. She had the support of her siblings, and that gave her courage. Through all this, the four Greens remained tightly knit, bound not just by blood but by survival and understanding. They had endured pain and loss that could have torn them apart, yet they leaned on each other instead. And for Luke, watching his siblings live their truths, love, identity, joy, became part of his own healing. Freedom wasn't just escaping control, it was witnessing life continue in all its complexity and knowing he had a place in it. It wasn't perfect, there were still hard days, memories still lingered, but for the first time, Luke and the Greens as a whole could face the world together, resilient, unbroken, and finally free.